welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Lara.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Kayla.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Just got done with a long cheer comp and excited to record true crime style.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend the other day and we were talking about her daughter's friend who just, her family wasn't really paying attention to her. Like she was just off doing her own thing. And I was like, I think her parents need to listen to some more true crime because I could never just let my kid just out and not pay attention to what they're doing.
When you start to hear and like go through more stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just dropped her off and left. And I was like, they didn't even make sure like you were the right people. And she's like, nope. We were out in the street. We weren't even in the house.
Oh my gosh.
Like they need to listen to some true crime podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
They're too trusting.
Yeah.
I literally left this morning, and as soon as I left, because my husband was outside, my toddler was inside, and I was like, he was about to come back in, and I texted him, I'm like, are you inside? Like, I left 2 seconds ago, but I need to make sure that you know where your toddler is.
Yeah. Well, when we were leaving today,
Mm-hmm.
Brandon was like, are you going to take her? And I was like, no, you take her. She probably needs to get food and I'm hurrying home. And we had gone back and forth and she had gone to get her backpack and I left. And then I was like, make sure she's with him. What if he left? What if he wasn't quite sure if I was taking her or not? But she's home now.
Good.
Yeah.
Everyone's safe and sound.
Yes.
Yeah, we did it. This one's pretty wild. I think I'm interested if you guys have heard this one before. Are you ready to dive in?
Yes, I am. Let's do it.
All right. You're walking through a busy downtown street, the hum of cars, the chatter of pedestrians, it all feels routine. But then you see him, a man in a dark blazer, walking aimlessly, one shoe missing. His face is etched with confusion. His movements are erratic. He stumbles into a parking garage. He's trying to open a locked door, and then he vanishes into the night. 2 days later, his bruised and battered body is found in a landfill, discarded like trash. The cause of death? Homicide by blunt force trauma. But this wasn't just any man. This was John Jack Wheeler III, who was a Vietnam veteran, a former White House aide, a Pentagon official, and a cybersecurity consultant. A man who had dedicated his life to national security, advising multiple U.S. presidents, and working on highly sensitive defense projects. How does someone like Jack Wheeler go from the halls of power to an unmarked dumpster? What happened in those final disoriented days? And was his work in cybersecurity and government intelligence somehow related or connected to his death? A random crime? A government conspiracy, or something even stranger? Tonight, we dig into the mystery, retracing Jack Wheeler's bizarre final hours, his shadowy government connections, and the questions that still to this day remain unanswered. Because if Jack Wheeler, a man with Pentagon ties and insider knowledge, could be silenced so easily, what does that say about the forces that may have been at play? This is Crime Clueless, and today we're asking the question, who killed Jack Wheeler and why?
Very intriguing.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah,
I don't
me
think
too.
I've heard about this before either.
I don't think I have either.
I actually hadn't either.
Oh, interesting.
And I saw the mention in a news article and had to go dig. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Before he became the center of a murder mystery, Jack, he goes by Jack and we'll call him Jack through the episode, Wheeler III lived a life that many would call extraordinary. He was born in 1944. Wheeler was a West Point graduate, a Harvard Business School alum, and a Yale-trained lawyer. His resume read like something out of a political thriller. Military service, government work, and deep involvement in national security, cybersecurity, and defense strategy. He graduated from West Point in 1966 and then served in the Vietnam War, where he gained firsthand experience in combat strategy and leadership. After returning from service, he attended Harvard Business School and then later earned his law degree from Yale. His military service shaped his career, and he remained deeply connected to national defense policies. In the early 1980s, Wheeler became one of the driving forces behind the creation of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. The project was controversial. Many opposed its minimalist black granite design, calling it unpatriotic or too somber. Wheeler fought to ensure its completion, believing that the U.S. needed a proper space to honor those who had served in Vietnam. Thanks to his advocacy, the memorial became one of the most visited and respected monuments in the country. Wheeler worked under multiple presidential administrations, including Reagan, Bush Sr., and Bush Jr. He served as a Pentagon official and worked on nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons programs, advising the U.S. military on how to prepare for potential threats. During the Gulf War, he played a high-level role in strategy discussions. Later, he worked as a special assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force, helping develop defense policies. In the 2000s, Wheeler's expertise shifted towards cybersecurity and national defense. He became a consultant for MITRE Corporation, which is MITRE, a company that provides research and security solutions for the U.S. government, military, and intelligence agencies. MITRE specializes in artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, and classified military projects, meaning Wheeler had access to highly sensitive information. His work focused on protecting the nation's digital infrastructure from cyber attacks, a critical and often dangerous area of expertise. Wheeler wasn't just another bureaucrat, he moved in powerful circles. He walked alongside high-ranking military officials, intelligence officers, and political leaders. His access to classified projects and sensitive national security information raised serious questions after his death. For example, did he know something he wasn't supposed to? Was his work in cybersecurity connected to his murder? Did he uncover a threat or a breach that then made him a target? Jack Wheeler was a man who had seen the inner workings of the U.S. government for decades. He knew how things operated at the highest levels of power. So when his body turned up in a landfill, brutally beaten, with no clear explanation of how he got there, it sent shockwaves through those that knew him. And his final days were bizarre. They were filled with erratic behavior, missing belongings, inexplicable wanderings. Was it a sign of a mental breakdown or a man on the run? So what happened to Jack Wheeler, and more importantly, who wanted him dead? For all of his government experience, military service, and deep ties to national security, Jack Wheeler was a husband, father, and brother. At the time of his death, he was married to Catherine Clueless, a respected textile executive. The two lived in Newcastle, Delaware, a historic town with cobblestone streets, colonial charm, a far cry from the high-stakes world of Washington, D.C. The two of them did not have children together, but Jack had 2 children from his first marriage. Jack was close to his extended family, including his brother, Robert Wheeler, who spoke out later about the many questions surrounding Jack's death. His wife, Catherine, describes him as a brilliant but sometimes absent-minded person, someone who could be lost in thought about national security policies one moment, misplacing his belongings the next. Nothing in his past suggested the kind of erratic behavior, though, that he displayed in his final days. After his murder, Catherine expressed frustration with the investigation, stating that the authorities failed to take his case seriously enough. To this day, she and many others doubt the official explanation for how he ended up dead in a landfill. On December 28th, 2010, one of the last days that Jack Wheeler is seen on video surveillance, it seemed like a slow unraveling, and it's odd because his life was marked by discipline, intelligence, and control. This wasn't just any man wandering the streets. This was the former Pentagon insider, White House aide, cybersecurity expert with deep knowledge of national defense. And yet, in the final hours before his death, he moved through Wilmington, Delaware, in a state of confusion and distress, leaving behind a trail of bizarre behavior and unanswered questions. The first real sign that something was wrong came on that evening. Security cameras captured Wheeler inside Happy Harry's pharmacy in Newcastle. He looked disheveled, his movements tense and erratic. He told the pharmacist that his briefcase had been stolen. and he asked for a ride to Wellington. That briefcase, which has never been found, was rumored to contain sensitive documents related to his work in cybersecurity. Was it stolen from him, or had he left it behind in this disoriented state? From the pharmacy, Wheeler wandered into a parking garage. Surveillance footage showed him pacing back and forth, appearing lost. At one point, he approached a parking attendant, claiming that he had been robbed and needed help getting to Wellington. But here's where it gets even stranger. Wheeler had the money to get home. His wallet was still in his possession. If he was in immediate danger, why didn't he call someone? Why didn't he seek police assistance? Instead, he vanished into the night.
Did they mention that he seemed like maybe intoxicated or something like that?
It's described not as intoxicated, but
Like confused?
confused,
Okay.
bewildered, in a weird state of mind. Yeah,
Okay.
Did he have a cell phone?
he did. Yeah. He only had lost his briefcase and a shoe at this point.
If he
Okay.
had lost a shoe, that makes me think that like he had been jumped or something, you know?
Or running from someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't know how he lost his shoe. That wasn't captured.
Hmm.
And I mean, this is the very end of 2010.
Yeah.
So there is surveillance like everywhere. But
Interesting.
It's interesting.
yeah.
I feel like him being, you know, so public and having such high powered jobs, sensitive information, it would make more sense that his briefcase was stolen for some reason. Like that seems too big of a coincidence
Yeah.
for it to never be found.
Right. That's the key right there, that it's never been recovered.
And how old is he here?
I think he's 66.
Okay.
On December 28th, that same day, a neighbor noticed something unusual at Jack's house. The back door of the Wheelers' home had been forced open. The lights were on inside, but Wheeler was nowhere to be found. There were signs of an attempted break-in, but nothing appeared to be stolen. Concerned, the neighbor called the police, reporting the suspicious activity. Officers arrived at the Wheelers' home. There were no signs of Wheeler himself, and his wife was visiting family for the Christmas holiday that had just been 3 days before.
This is after he was seen at the pharmacy?
The same day.
Okay.
I think it was earlier in the day, but it wasn't pieced together until later.
Okay.
And the police left without further action because it didn't seem like anything was missing.
Mm.
But later, his wife, Catherine, would say that several items were missing, including some of Jack's papers and work documents, his West Point class ring, and his cell phone. So I think he had two. I think he had
Like a work cell phone?
and a personal.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, especially being, in his position. It would make sense to have a work phone. And
yeah. And they think that he might have been home when it happened, because they also say it's strange that he hadn't reported the break-in. But then some reports say that he was coming back from New York at the time and shouldn't really have been anywhere near that.
Interesting.
So we have to wonder, with Jack wandering the streets of Wellington, confused, without his briefcase, seemingly desperate for a ride home. Did he know something was coming? Did someone break into his home looking for something important? Had Wheeler already fled and maybe he didn't know that his home was broken into? Maybe he knew he was being watched. This strange home intrusion only deepens our mystery. Was it a simple burglary? It seems too coincidental for that to me. Whatever happened that night, it seems that Jack Wheeler might have been a marked man. The next day, on December 29th, Wheeler was seen inside a different office building in Wellington, this time at 10th and Orange Street. He entered the Nemours building, a well-known corporate structure in the city. Employees inside noticed him behaving strangely. He was mumbling. He looked confused and disoriented. He seemed unable to find his way out. Security camera caught him wandering the halls, stepping in and out of elevators, as if he wasn't sure where he was or where he was supposed to go.
Jenna, did he have like a history of any kind of dementia or anything, or was this just kind of completely out of the blue?
That's a good question. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And some of the things that they noticed remind me of like Elisa Lam.
Yeah.
But They said that it was really well controlled
Okay.
and that he was really good about staying on top of it.
Yeah, I'm just curious if, incidents like this had ever happened before, or if at this point this is completely out of the norm.
Completely out of the norm.
Okay.
He had one break, I believe, many years before and had sought treatment for it.
Okay.
So he was very on top of it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Kind of
very
makes me
questionable.
wonder if he was home during the break-in and he got hit on the head or something, and then he ran out and maybe he had some concussion or some kind of brain injury that
Absolutely.
they didn't know about.
Mhm.
And that could explain some of that behavior and maybe why he, his stuff was stolen and he's reporting that to people.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he didn't have a shoe on because he was running from them. Someone
Mhm.
broke into his house. And
Yeah.
I mean, we know that did
door.
happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he was there and got hit and was hurt and
Yeah.
no one knew.
I wonder how he would have got downtown. I wonder if he drove. That was probably scary.
He might have. And if
Because then he couldn't find his car, I guess.
he was confused and
Mhm.
didn't remember where he was.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody
know.
knows where he was the rest of the night. Like after he went off of this surveillance in the parking garage. They don't know until the next day when he's picked up at the other building.
Well, and maybe he thought he had parked in that parking garage. If that was somewhere that he parked frequently, maybe he was looking for his car in there.
Sure. I think that's very possible. I also think that this is one of the reasons his wife says the investigation wasn't thorough enough, because she's pointed out before that there's surveillance practically everywhere, even on the streets in that town. And she thinks that they should have been able to find his next steps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did they ever locate his car?
They did, yes.
Okay. I'm assuming we'll get to that.
Just ahead of the game, Krista.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. I'm wondering where that car is. Okay.
Yeah.
I know. We're always trying to figure out what might have happened.
I know.
The
That's
armchair
good, though.
detectives.
That's why I bring you in. So Wheeler still only had on one shoe at this point the next day, and his suit looked disheveled. Eventually, on his own, Wheeler left the building that he was in and once again disappeared from public view. This would be the last time that anyone saw him alive. On December 30th, the next day, at around 9:56 a.m. on December 30th, a garbage truck from the city of Newark, Delaware, pulled into the Cherry Island landfill to dump its latest haul. Among the piles of discarded trash, workers spotted something horrifying, a human body, battered and lifeless. It was John Jack Wheeler III. His body had been dumped somewhere along the garbage collection route in Newark, likely discarded into a commercial dumpster before being unknowingly transported to the landfill. The autopsy showed that the official cause of death was homicide by blunt force trauma. Wheeler had multiple injuries consistent with an assault, but no defensive wounds, suggesting he was either incapacitated or just out of it by the time he was killed. He had been beaten, but not robbed. He still had valuables on him, except the briefcase, but that had been missing for 2 days. Even more disturbing, the autopsy couldn't determine exactly when he had died. His body had been in the dumpster for some time, but the timeline of when he was murdered still remains murky. What was certain, however, was that someone wanted him gone and went to great lengths to make sure his body disappeared.
I feel like if this would have been just a random something like a robbery, they would have taken his valuables.
I agree.
I mean, they should have to make it seem more like a robbery,
Yes.
Like, I agree with that. But if you're trying to make it seem like a robbery or a mugging gone wrong, then they should have taken those anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, they should have. I was thinking that too. I was like, maybe, if he was confused and just out walking the streets, maybe he wasn't in a good area. But you're right. Seems like they would have taken his stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Unless they're sending a message.
Yeah.
To who?
Maybe. Well, I was saying like
Other
if
people he works with. I
if
don't
it
know.
was a random, like he
Yeah.
was out in a bad neighborhood and someone jumped him like
Mhm.
randomly, then they would have taken
Yeah,
his stuff.
absolutely.
So
At
I,
least like his cash.
yeah, something
Yeah, because he had money on him.
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, I get not taking the credit cards because those can be traced, but
Mhm.
any cash, or if he was wearing any like rings or watches, something like that,
Yeah, and he was.
Yeah.
Even a phone you can wipe and then sell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense.
No.
So we've got this critical window of missing time. We've got him on the afternoon of December 29th in that Nemours building and discovered the next morning. Where he went, who he encountered, and how he ended up dead remain a complete mystery. Some believe that his government ties and his work in cybersecurity and national defense put him in danger. Others think that he may have suffered a mental breakdown. But would a breakdown explain his brutal murder? And again, if this was a random killing, why was his body dumped in a way that suggests a cover-up? The questions surrounding his death only deepen the more you look at them. With his high-level government background, it's easy to see why theories about his murder range from political assassination to espionage to an organized crime hit. What we do know was that Jack Wheeler was scared in his final days. His missing briefcase held something important. He was seen exhibiting paranoid behaviors if he was running from something or someone. And his body was dumped in a landfill, suggesting someone wanted to make sure he was erased. Let's go through that evidence and what we actually know. So his case is perplexing because it's recent. We've got surveillance camera, we've got phone records, emails, you've got home security systems, Despite the surveillance and the autopsy, there's almost no physical evidence that pointed directly to what happened to him in his final moments. We've got him on December 28th at the pharmacy, claiming that his briefcase was stolen, which also is weird to me because it's 2 days before he was found, at least 24 hours before he was murdered. So they got to him twice.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they maybe wanted to murder him at his house and something happened and he got away somehow and then they found him again. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seems odd to have a break-in and then, he's wandering around for 2 days and then winds up dead.
Yeah, and they stole papers from his house too.
Yeah, that seems like far too much of a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they had been looking for him. They didn't know where he went.
Mm-hmm.
If he got away, if they were in his house and he ran from them and then they found his documents really were something that they decided they should
take care of him.
Yeah.
Or they went through his briefcase and then decided
maybe
he knew too much or something.
Yeah. And then they were looking for him because if he was out and confused and no one really knew where he was.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing with the video surveillance is that there's nobody in the surveillance with him or the same between at the pharmacy, at the parking garage, and at the building the next day. And there's no clear threat. And to be disoriented wearing the same suit for that long. Where was he on the night of the 28th?
Yeah. He might have been sleeping in a park or something.
Yeah. Or he found his car.
Maybe.
Slept in that. Maybe he didn't want to go home.
If he was scared to go home.
One of the biggest red flags in this case remains Wheeler's missing briefcase. And like I said, it's never been found. If it's robbery, why would only his briefcase be taken and they left cash on him and valuables? If someone wanted to silence Wheeler, could the briefcase have held something important related to his cybersecurity work? Was it stolen before he realized it was missing, triggering his paranoia and wandering? Or was he hit over the head and it was stolen and that caused the paranoia and the panic, His cause of death is also crazy, having no defensive wounds. So either he was unconscious or unable to fight back. I don't think that, sometimes we say no defensive wounds and it's because they knew the person, right? I don't get the feeling from this one that that's the case.
Yeah, me neither.
The lack of defensive wounds raise key questions because he suffered multiple injuries within the assault. Was he attacked from behind or ambushed? Was he already incapacitated? Could he have been drugged, perhaps?
Well, when you say he passed away from blunt force trauma, was he hit in like the front of his head, the back of his head? I mean, because that could tell a lot. Like if somebody came up behind him and hit him, that wouldn't leave defensive wounds if he didn't know they were coming up behind him.
Right. According to the medical examiner's report, Wheeler had blunt force injuries kind of all over on his head, torso, and upper body. He also had multiple severe injuries, which included a punctured lung, broken ribs, bleeding in the head, bruises to his face, orbital bones, temples, and mouth, external neck injury, swollen lips, lacerations in various areas. It also indicated that he suffered a heart attack at some point, which is awful.
That is terrible.
So sad.
That is awful. You have to wonder, too, if some of those were from like the garbage being dumped on him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because depending on what was in some of the garbage cans, if he was in there and it was earlier in the route, a lot of stuff might have been dumped on him, which is really sad.
It is.
Which could be heavy.
Yeah.
Cause other
I
injuries.
mean, I've seen people put suitcases in, or I've put heavy things in there.
Yeah.
That could cause some of those things. I wonder.
Well, and it was a commercial garbage can too.
Yeah. I wonder if they were able to determine if it was pre or postmortem.
I think all the ones listed were pre.
Or determined to be.
I think so, but it's hard to tell.
Well, they weren't able to determine
His time
how
of
long
death.
he'd been dead.
Right.
So
So I'm saying for the autopsy, it was hard to tell for them.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. I think it would be hard for them to tell what was
If it
pre or
was
post.
before or after.
I think especially with some of those, but they can tell like the color of the bruising. They can tell how much it bled,
Yeah.
if it was before or after.
It makes me wonder about the brain bleed,
Mm-hmm.
because if that was like a slow bleed, if he got hit before and just slowly he'd been, that could have caused the confusion too.
Mm-hmm.
I
Interesting.
wonder if they could tell like how old that bleed was.
Yeah, if that had happened during the break-in or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I'll have
don't
to
know.
look. That could, yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting.
I say yeah a lot. Oh,
It's a lot to think about, if all those possibilities, it's hard to determine what happened.
right.
It's really tricky.
Yeah, especially like you said, where he was in the dumpster too, and who knows where along the route.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it was at the beginning. And I mean, they didn't know until they found him in the landfill. So
Right.
they don't know where he was he could have been in the first pickup.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's the next point is, his body was found in the landfill and he came from the commercial dumpster. And it's just odd to me that they haven't been able to pinpoint where along that route,
Yeah.
because I feel like you would get a lot of evidence from that.
I wonder if they could look at the cans that they picked up and check for any type of blood or anything.
They should be able to.
Yeah, you would
I
think
think
so.
That's another one of her points. And maybe they have and they haven't released it because it's not solved.
Maybe.
And they don't want to give away what they do or don't know,
Yeah.
possibly.
I mean, that's a lot of cans to check, but seems like for an unsolved homicide case, they would look more into things like that.
Right. Absolutely. Everybody would deserve that.
Yeah.
And if he's bleeding,
Mm-hmm.
you've got,
Well, and even just from being stuffed in a garbage can,
right.
there's going to be some kind of evidence in there.
You would think.
You would think.
Yeah.
Unless,
I would think.
Unless they were wearing a hazmat suit.
Unless he was rolled up in something.
yeah.
But still, I mean,
Unless he was paranoid and climbed in.
yeah, but he got all of those other injuries, which I don't think would come.
Laura's just pulling all the parallels from Elisa Lamb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
don't
missed
know.
that.
Oh, you caught on that quicker than me and Jen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're like,
It could have happened. I don't know.
yeah.
He climbed in there to sleep, had a heart attack. I don't think so, but
I don't
because
think
the
so.
blunt force trauma, right?
unless that was from heavy things dumped on him in the garbage truck.
But he couldn't have been in there if it's commercial, even if he got in the night before, it was taken all the way to the landfill before 10 a.m. So it would have been early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would have time to put too much more in there. I mean, I guess you're dumping the
No,
other
from
ones along
after-
the route.
Yeah, unless he was
Right.
into the garbage truck and then all the other cans after that.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what was in them?
Where's his
I don't know. I'm a
briefcase?
skeptic. I'm a skeptic.
No, it's
but
good.
I mean, I think about all the different things that could be, you know.
Well, and he also had all of his belongings still on him. Like Kayla said, if you're trying to make it look like a robbery, you would take that stuff. And they didn't. I don't think it's too out there.
No, I don't either. I mean, it's one of the theories. I mean, yeah.
If he was paranoid and trying to hide and was lost.
Paranoid and trying to hide like in a water tank. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
It's very interesting to think about, especially since they don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm.
It's a different thought process, I guess I have.
I need to go down that avenue of, I need to look into that more. Like what could happen? Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened to people and what are their injuries?
Especially since he had a heart attack too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And
The brain bleed.
and possibly a brain bleed.
Mm-hmm.
Easy.
I don't think you're crazy. I just don't think it's as plausible. Sorry.
Probably not, but
It's an interesting
thought.
suggestion.
Well,
Like a theory.
And on her line of thought, maybe the whole reason that they think it's something more than what Laura's saying is because of his job
Yeah.
and what he was working on. And so that leads to more.
and his things were stolen. His work stuff was stolen.
Right.
If it was his work phone and his work documents at home and his briefcase,
Unless he put it in that dumpster and it's in the landfill.
maybe.
I can go down any rabbit hole. I can go down your path too.
Pull out your tinfoil
Yeah,
hats,
I don't know.
ladies.
Well, but he didn't have his briefcase, though, at the other two locations, right? Unless he found it and crawled in there with it, which I guess is possible.
Or he put it in a different one.
He threw it away. Yeah.
And maybe he was looking for it.
Maybe. He fell in, had a heart attack.
How do you fall in a commercial dumpster?
If you're looking for something in there, I don't know. I've never tried to get in one.
Or if you're disoriented and
Yeah, you have a mini stroke
and
going on.
Also, it is December in Delaware. It's cold.
Yeah, it's cold.
It's cold. So
Maybe there was a blanket in there.
maybe
was
maybe there
going
were a
for the
lot of
blanket.
papers. It's probably less gross than like a home garbage can, right?
Well, and if he was confused,
Yeah.
I don't know. Just a thought.
No, I can see that line of thinking. Yeah. But the other part is the forced entry into his home, right? That day where they did take papers,
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
unless he staged it. See, I can go down and then left.
and then left, threw his stuff away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think his house was broken into
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And that stuff was stolen. And, because of his job, I'm sure there was something else going on. But it's just kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It's hard to say where those injuries came from
Mm-hmm.
because he was in a garbage truck.
And is that why they put him in there so that they would maybe think
It would cover it
it
up.
wasn't, right?
Who knows?
Maybe that's why they didn't steal his belongings
Maybe.
because then it just looks like he went to sleep in there.
Well, and like you said earlier too, why was it 2 days later he was found?
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
know? But we kind of
was
talked
seen
about
on the 29th.
right. But I'm saying
Oh,
like between the
his
break-in
briefcase.
and then when he
Mm-hmm.
was found in the landfill,
Yeah.
that's what we were kind of talking about earlier. Like why
Mm-hmm.
was that? And then all this time passed before he was found.
Right.
It was several, and he was seen in between. It's not like
Yeah. If he
his
hadn't
house
have
was
been
broken
seen,
into. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
not like his house was broken into and then he wasn't seen for 2 days and then turned up
Mhm. Yeah. You've got the pharmacy and the parking garage, and then
in that building. And
Mhm.
so he was wandering
he
and
was.
confused and I don't know, interesting.
Oh, I wish I had more information on the timeline of those injuries. If the brain bleed
Yeah.
or even the mild heart attack, maybe it was mild and
Yeah.
caused something,
Yeah.
I
Come
wonder
on,
if
nurse.
I wonder if he was taking medicine for like a heart attack and took too much or something,
Maybe.
or to prevent a heart attack,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I feel like it makes sense to me that if he was home during that break-in and got hit in the head, then to cause a brain bleed and
The confusion.
the confusion and all those things,
Right.
that makes sense in my mind. and then be out lost wandering.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's definitely lots of questions still.
He could have not been on top of his medication too at this time because of the holidays.
Well,
They
and if he was out
traveled.
wandering,
Yeah.
he didn't have his medication with him, I'm sure.
Right. And they
He
had
hadn't been
traveled.
home.
And so, right.
He hadn't been home for several days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the most frustrating parts of this is the lack of forensic evidence. So we have no fingerprints, no DNA, no physical evidence that has ever linked anyone to his murder.
Oh, wow. Nothing?
Nothing. And I do agree they should have been able to go through. I don't know how many stops they make though, but they go through, thousands of people when they're trying to find someone, or I would think you could go through there with luminol or something.
Yeah.
Looking for blood.
What's luminol?
Lights up blood.
Oh, okay.
So they take it to a crime scene.
Well, and that would be easy to go down the routes and look in cans and see if there's blood in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not like they're swabbing for things, just a quick peek in each can.
Yeah, but I guess a black light would probably light up everything.
Yeah.
Probably. I feel like there
It'd
would
probably
be
be
a lot
hard.
that would light up.
Probably.
Yeah.
So maybe not easy.
Yeah, I don't know. If his killers were professionals, they may have ensured there were no obvious forensic traces left behind. They either got lucky or they knew exactly how to leave no trace.
Like we said, maybe they attacked him and then that's why they put him in the garbage can to cover it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Despite years of speculation, the Jack Wheeler case remains unsolved. We're 14 plus years later. FBI has investigated the case, but they've never released their full findings. His family's still demanding answers. His wife believes he was murdered, but by whom and why remains a mystery. Could the truth about what really happened to Jack still be out there, or was this case designed to remain unsolved from the start? Let's break down the theories. Theory number 1 is a targeted hit. Was Jack Wheeler assassinated? Jack wasn't just any government consultant. He was a man with intimate knowledge of U.S. military operations, cybersecurity, national defense strategies. At the time of his death, he was working with MITRE Corporation, a group heavily involved in cyber warfare and classified government projects. So what if Wheeler knew something he wasn't supposed to? Possible reasons could be a cybersecurity breach. Did Wheeler uncover a major cyber threat or intelligence leak? Government black ops. Could he have stumbled upon a classified operation gone wrong? Internal corruption. Was he maybe about to expose something shady inside MITRE or the Pentagon? The stolen briefcase is obviously a major red flag. If it contains sensitive government documents, it could have been the reason he was silenced. Additionally, the manner of his death suggests a professional job. He was severely beaten, yet had no defensive wounds, possibly meaning he was restrained or heavily incapacitated. And his body was dumped in a landfill, making it harder to determine the exact time and location of his death, which is a common tactic in professional assassinations. If he was murdered by powerful sources, it's no surprise that the case remains unsolved. What do you guys think about that one?
I think that's very plausible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes sense, especially if they broke into his home, stole his stuff, found out he did have the information they thought he did, and then tracked him down and took him out.
Right.
I just think it's too much of a coincidence for it to not be connected with the home break-in, his briefcase being missing.
And never found.
And there's no explanation for the break-in. They weren't able to find any DNA or anything there. So that makes it seem more professional as well.
Right.
So I definitely think there was something going on.
Seems that way, but there's so little information.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Theory 2 is the opposite, and what we were kind of just talking about, a random mugging gone wrong. One of the simplest explanations is that Wheeler was the victim of a random crime. He was seen wandering the streets alone, looking confused, possibly making himself a target for robbery. There are a couple problems with this theory, though. His wallet and valuables were still on him, meaning robbery probably wasn't the motive, because if it was, you're bad at your job.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, especially not to take any cash out of his wallet. That makes, in my mind, that makes it seem like it's definitely not a mugging.
Mhm.
I think so too. The only thing I was thinking, like maybe they were not very experienced muggers and they didn't mean to kill him and they panicked, stuffed him somewhere and ran away.
Mhm.
If they got scared that, oh, I was just trying to rob this guy and now I've killed him.
Right.
And so they
they're
just
getting out of
ran.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be true too.
It could be.
I think if you're going to take the time to put the body in a trash can, though, you would still take the money, at least in my
Probably.
mind. Probably panicking. I'm like, oh, I got to hide this body. But
If
I
you're
don't know.
taking
I'd
the
still
time
take the
to
money. Yeah.
beat him like that,
Yes.
though, too, to cause the injuries that he sustained.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because usually they just want to get the money and run.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
I don't know.
I mean,
'Cause if-
one of the first things that they would do would be give me your wallet, you know?
Yeah. Unless it was like a gang type thing and they beat him up. Didn't
Yeah.
mean to kill him. I
Yeah.
don't know. He was confused. Maybe he
mhm.
just happened upon
Something you shouldn't
something
have.
he shouldn't have.
Coincidence, but not implausible.
Mm-hmm.
He walked into a drug deal. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, if you're
Walking
wandering
on
the
the
streets
street.
at night, yeah.
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 I don't know.
Theory 3 is a psychological breakdown that led to his death. Some believe that Wheeler's erratic behavior in his final days could be evidence of a mental health crisis. Wandering through the parking garage, the pharmacy, the office buildings, disoriented and panicked, suggesting he could have been experiencing delusions or paranoia, hallucinations, cognitive impairment, either due to a medical condition or medication or getting hit on the head.
Stroke.
It could have been that they broke into his house and hit him on the head and stole his stuff. And then he did climb in the dumpster.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If he was suffering the mental breakdown, people ask how did he end up in the landfill? But I think we answered that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thought.
Laura's theory.
Yeah. One possibility is that he was attacked after an altercation, maybe perhaps with a stranger or security guard who mistook his erratic behavior as a threat. If someone accidentally killed him, like we just talked about, they could have panicked and tried to dispose of his body. But a lot of the research and reporting says that he was beaten pretty severely, and the contusions and things weren't just from a fight, and probably not just from,
Garbage.
yeah, right.
Unless someone put a safe in their garbage can. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think that that's the case because if they were ruling it a homicide, I think they would probably be able to tell the difference between an assault and crushing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like those would leave different wounds.
I think so
Mhm.
too. But it's hard having been dumped in a garbage truck and then gone through the whole route.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know how you say none of the injuries were from that,
Yeah. No, I don't think you could say none, but
but probably I would assume not all of them.
mhm.
No.
I think that if they looked at it and deemed it that way, that
It's
it,
for a
it
reason.
was. Yeah.
Especially the FBI looking into it.
Yeah.
Theory 4 is one that we haven't really talked about, but shortly before his death, Wheeler was involved in a heated legal dispute over the construction of a chemical plant near his home in Delaware. He was fighting against the company, believing the project was a threat to public health and the environment. Could someone possibly connected to the project have wanted him out of the way?
Question, did the plant end up getting built?
That's a great question, Kayla. I like it. So I was able to find that some chemical plants were built in and around the city, but I can't find specifically if it was that specific one that he was fighting against. And the ones that were built weren't for more than a decade later. So I'm not sure how that's connected, but that is a great question. Theory number 5 that's talked about is if he had a stalker or someone with a personal vendetta. Could someone from Wheeler's past have been responsible? Maybe a former colleague with a grudge, a government insider who thought Wheeler was a threat, an obsessed follower who tracked him down. His theory seems to align with his paranoia in the final days. He acted as if someone was after him. But if a personal enemy killed Wheeler, why dump him in a landfill instead of making that murder more personal? There's also theories out there that he was sort of the Robert Snowden before Snowden.
Mhm.
because of the information he had from the positions that he had held. There's also a talk about a home that was going to be built near his home, and it would have been on a historic site from Battery Park. And with all of his work with veterans, he thought it was really wrong to desecrate basically where that battle took place to build homes. So his wife has even talked about how possibly somebody who was with the city government or involved in that in some way, shape, or form could have hired a hitman, which does align with how he was murdered and disposed and not a robbery. But there's so many theories out there.
Yeah.
And so little evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it seem like it was something more professional where there is so little evidence.
Right. And, if it was somebody else, they had to know the garbage truck routes because they had to know which one was getting picked up, because otherwise they would have been able to find him there as opposed to once he was already in the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly they probably thought he would never be found.
Yeah.
If they hadn't have noticed, there have been other cases where people have been dumped and they haven't been able to find them.
Yeah.
The dogs can't find them in there and they know they're in there.
Oh,
and
wow.
they still can't find them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
horrifying.
It is horrifying. And that, knowing that that's happened in other cases is what makes me wonder if that's why he was in the dumpster going to the landfill. They thought he would never be found. He would just disappear.
Yeah.
Right.
Ew, it makes me never want to go to a landfill.
Yeah, don't go to a landfill.
No.
No, thank you.
I think that's a very common professional dumping ground, right? Is just to dump them in a trash can that would get picked up. Because unless someone is looking out and sees a body, you just get dumped and then the truck drives away and more comes and gets dumped on top of it.
Well, and some of them have like the compactors. So once they put it in, it pushes it all to make room for next. So, depending on where they are. And I know.
Laura's face.
Yeah, you can't pay me to go there.
No.
Just wait. Next year, one of your kids is going to have a field trip to a landfill. They're going to ask you to be a volunteer.
And Laura's
I won't go.
I cannot, and my kids will also miss that day.
Yeah.
Yes, my kids aren't going either. And they don't go to landfills. They go lots of crazy places. Far away and expensive.
Not cheap.
No.
Not free
Not
to the
cheap
landfill.
To the landfill, yes.
No.
Oh, man. All right. The most likely scenario that most professionals and reporting research on this case is, even though, his case is unsolved, mostly they say they think he was targeted for what he knew. However, they don't know if it was the cybersecurity, the government projects, or a national security threat. They believe that his briefcase had important documents in it, and because it's never been found, that is just a big red flag for foul play. And his body disposal method suggests a professional effort to cover up his death. And like I said, I think they thought he would never be found.
Yeah.
His final hours paint a tragic picture. A man once at the center of U.S. national security, reduced to a disoriented wanderer, seemingly aware that something or someone was closing in on him. One interesting thing that I haven't been able to find from the toxicology was if he was drugged or poisoned. And, his bizarre behavior in those last 48 hours is not normal. And also, I would like to see if he had his medications in his system at appropriate levels.
Yeah.
He was clearly paranoid, but not making rational decisions. He wasn't seeking police help, even though, he was saying he was robbed at the pharmacy.
Kind of disappointing, I guess would be the word I was thinking, that no one called the police to come and pick him up.
Yeah.
When he was obviously disheveled. He's confused. He's missing a shoe. Why didn't someone from any of those places that saw him and, said that he had this weird behavior call the police?
Yeah, like make him stay where he is, especially in the pharmacy.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people saw him.
Yeah. And it's obvious that something's wrong with him.
That's a really good point. That
really
is
sad that no
disappointing.
one did anything. And it's probably the bystander effect. Oh,
they think someone
else will do it.
Yeah.
But maybe if they had picked him up, taken him to the hospital if something was wrong with him, or if someone was hunting him, if he was, at the hospital, they could have called his wife to come and get him, kept him safe.
Yeah.
That's so true.
That's what I was thinking about with all these times he was spotted and talked to people and was reporting that someone had robbed him and no one calls the police.
Yeah.
They just watch him leave the
Like,
pharmacy.
Yeah,
That's
that's really
weird.
sad.
They watch him leave the building the next day.
Yes.
And he didn't seem like he knew where he was going in that building. You would think.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. Someone should have called somebody to at least after he left. Hey, there's this weird guy wandering our street. He is in a suit that's obviously disheveled. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's doing. He only has one shoe. He's saying he's been robbed.
Right.
But
And
let's
someone
just watch him walk away.
Yeah.
That's really sad
That is really sad.
because maybe they could have saved a life.
And you don't have to get involved.
Yeah.
You don't have to detain him. You don't have to, but like you said, even after he left or while he's walking around in there.
Yes.
Yeah. Some possibilities that have been brought up for maybe if he did have a drug in his system is something commonly called devil's breath, which is a drug that causes confusion, amnesia, and compliance, often used in assassinations and kidnappings. Sedatives or hallucinogens. He could have been dosed with something that caused the paranoia and the disoriented state. He could have been poisoned over time if it was like a long-term effort to get rid of him. Could he have been sick without even realizing it? And this, ties into why he had no defensive wounds and what we saw in the surveillance.
Yeah. I also thought too with drugs or something like that, maybe, or like poison, maybe that's why he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Could be
true.
I don't know.
Or the brain bleed.
Something.
Or both. Yeah.
Both could be related.
And I was thinking the brain bleed would probably be from, the blunt force trauma to his head.
Yeah, that's true.
But the heart attack, maybe not,
Right. So until toxicology is released, which they've never released it, it's impossible to know. And it's impossible to know what they tested for or didn't test for. The missing time, where was he between, the night of December 28th, the 29th, and then the 29th through the 30th? They saw him last at 10th and Orange Street on December 29th. And Wellington has surveillance cameras all over the city. And there's this huge gap in footage showing wherever Wheeler went after leaving that one building. Could it mean that he was taken somewhere without cameras? Or was the footage erased or withheld? Does the FBI have it? Or what happened to it?
Who knows?
That's awful for his family.
Yeah.
So many unanswered questions.
Yeah, so many.
So many possibilities.
And you can't piece it together without
Anything.
the case files, which they don't have to share with you.
Yeah.
Especially while it's still unsolved.
Mm-hmm.
And despite Wheeler being a former government official, the FBI has just never fully disclosed what they do know about this case. They've never named official suspects. No real progress has been made in 14 plus years. And that's where it ties back to if it was just a random crime, why does the case remain unsolved? Why are they holding back so many things? Like full details of toxicology or surveillance footage or even suspects,
Right.
That makes it seem like government's involved.
A little bit. Or another government.
Yeah.
Is part of what he was working on with cybersecurity was election interference and election integrity way back before it was even
questioned.
Yeah, like one of our common conversations,
Yeah.
for the last few. So what's the most likely scenario? Here's how these pieces might fit together in a plausible but terrifying way. Wheeler discovers something dangerous within, intelligent leaks, cybersecurity, something. Someone breaks into his home to retrieve the documents or send a warning, even perhaps. His briefcase goes missing. That could trigger the paranoia. He could be drug disoriented, making him vulnerable. He's taken, beaten, killed, but not with a gunshot or a clean execution, suggesting that it was either meant to be messy or a warning to others. And his body was dumped in a landfill, either to hide evidence, to hope he was never found, or again, to send some kind of message even after death.
They could have also been trying to get more information out of him
Yeah.
as possible. And then he could have had a heart attack from
That is
that.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe if they picked him up somewhere and took him somewhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They finally found him. Maybe whoever it was watching the security cameras and found him that
Yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah, that's possible. That's scary and so sad.
Yeah.
Really sad.
The mystery of Jack Wheeler isn't just about who killed him, it's why his death feels like it was never meant to be solved. I mean, you would think this would be a top news story everywhere.
Mhm.
And I mean, I even lived back there when this happened, and I don't remember hearing about it. And
Wow.
a lot of people that I've talked to since I've researched this case have never heard of it.
Wow.
And it's fairly recent, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So the real question is, who wanted to silence him and
What happened?
what
Yeah.
happened?
And why?
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 So many whys. Yeah. Jack Wheeler's life was one of purpose, power, and patriotism. A decorated Vietnam veteran, government insider, and cybersecurity expert, he dedicated himself to protecting the country. But in the final days of 2010, something changed. He went from a man respected in the highest levels of government to a disoriented figure, wandering around the streets, seemingly running from something or someone. Then he vanished. And when he was found, he wasn't just dead, he was discarded. A man with ties to the Pentagon, nuclear and cyber warfare, classified defense projects, was beaten, dumped in a dumpster, and left to rot in a landfill. There have been no arrests, no answers, and no justice. Whoever killed Jack Wheeler got away with it. And if a man like him could be eliminated so easily, what does that say about the forces at play? This case wasn't just a murder. It seems like it might have been a message. We just don't know what it was trying to say. And this wraps up Jack Wheeler's case. What do you guys think? Was that a cover-up, a targeted hit, or something more or less, I guess?
I think it seems far too coincidental after the break-in and his briefcase going missing for it to just be random.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the first theory we talked about is the one that makes most sense for me.
I think so too. And it could be a combination of multiple of those
It could
theories
be.
too.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think it was a combination of those things and that he found out something he shouldn't have and someone knew about it and went after him.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
It's really sad.
It is really sad. And it's really sad that there's been no answers, especially for his family.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a combo of maybe several of the things we talked about.
Could have been. I mean, he was involved in so many things. He knew so much information about a bunch of different topics. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
For
hard to-
decades.
yeah.
too.
Well, and
It's hard to pinpoint what
Yeah.
it could have been.
Well, and with his job, and then you add in the housing thing you were talking about and the building, the chemical building, whatever that was that he was fighting against. There's so many things that he was involved in. It's hard to know where
Yeah.
Yeah.
it could have come from.
Definitely agree.
I would love to see his phone records or if they got phone pings or
They found his work phone.
Yeah.
All the
Anything
things that are missing.
Or even security footage that I'm sure that they have to have and just hasn't been released.
The toxicology report, all those things would be really interesting to see.
Yeah. And I'm sure they would provide so many answers.
Yeah. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Keep it on your Google alert.
Yep. Already added. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. We really appreciate you spending time with us as we dive into these cases. If you're looking for the resources we used in this episode, head over to our blog. You can find it linked on our website, crimeclueless.com, under the contributor section. If you would be so kind, please follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Just search for @CrimeClueless. If you have any true crime stories of your own, we'd love to hear them. We would love to feature them on a future episode. Maybe you know somebody that was involved in something like this. Tell us about it. You can email us crimeclueless@gmail.com. And if you would share our podcast or rate, review, any of that means the world. You can find Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, iHeart, and all major streaming platforms. And remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye.